business over with. So thank you and welcome to this morning's meeting. And we've got Councillor Paul Fishwick is here substituting for the Berkshire Local Transport Body. So welcome, Paul. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I don't know if they've arrived yet, but we are having, if they're not here, we're expecting Kate Fairhall from Arup, Max Roche from Arup, Steve Bishop from Steer, and Edmund Cassidy from Steer. So if you're here, welcome, and if not, we'll welcome you later. And since our last meeting, Councillor Brock has stood down at the recent election, and so I just think we'd like to record our thanks for the work and support that he gave us. So if we could get that into the minutes, it would be useful, please. And Gary Nolan is the TfL rep, and I don't know if Gary's here, but if you are,
I am. Yeah.
Good morning, Gary, and welcome. Apologies for absence today. We have apologies from Vince Lucas, our business rep, from Councillor Becky Cooper, leader of Worthing, and from Councillor Matt Bolton, the leader of Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council. So have we any other apologies to record, Rupert? No? Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So we go on to the minutes from the previous meeting, and the draft minutes have all been circulated. So are there any points on there that anyone wants to raise, and can I agree them as a correct record?
Great.
David?
There was one point that I thought was worth asking about, which was the meeting was when we had the chap from National Highways, the chief executive, wasn't it, the last meeting? Yes. And there was a discussion about bringing forward the Bluebell Hill scheme and whether something could be done to advance the business case for that. And National Highways is going to go away and have a look at that and come back to us. And that's, I think, I've not got the minutes right in front of me, but I think it's something like item 13 or something in the minutes. There's some reference to that, and I wondered if anything had happened on that, please.
If I may, Chairman.
Yes,
I haven't heard anything specific on Bluebell Hill, but David, I think National Highways are shortly to publish their draft RIS, which may or may not contain information about projects in the southeast. I know that like all of us, the financial pressure on National Highways is quite significant. So I haven't heard anything specific in relation to Bluebell Hill yet, but we are awaiting the RIS to come out, which I'm expecting relatively soon. DFT on the corner might be able to add a bit more to the timeline.
Anyone, Dan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I don't have much to add, unfortunately, to what Rupert has just said, other than, we are expecting the draft RIS to come out for consultation soon. I don't quite know exactly how soon is soon, but certainly in fairly short order. So I guess watch this space for me.
Okay. Should we just follow up on the Bluebell Hill bit separately, just to see if we can glean any more information? Would that be appropriate?
So I think perhaps the way to deal with it is when the RIS comes out for consultation is to undoubtedly we want to make representations anyway, but I think the point to lobby on the Bluebell Hill is during the consultation. That feels like the right moment to do so.
So we're not going to lose sight of it?
No, we certainly won't, David. We won't.
Okay, good.
It was an undertaking given, so we just need them to follow up on that. That would be good.
Okay, thank you.
With that exception, is there any other alterations, or can I approve the minutes? No. Okay, so we'll take those as approved. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And they'll go on the website now. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that anyone wants to raise over and above which are recorded? None. We don't have any statements from the public today, so it's another agenda item that we won't be needing. So then we come on to agenda item 5, which is the business plan for 2025-26. And Rupert, are you going to introduce this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is a relatively short paper, so members will recall that we held an extraordinary board meeting in December to consider and agree the business plan. Feedback from members at the time was they would welcome an opportunity to engage in the business planning process earlier. So there's a couple of things that we would like to introduce. Work will start on the business plan in July. We'd want to bring that to you at your October board meeting for consideration. And then we'd like to recommend to the board we put in a partnership board meeting in December to agree the business plan prior to submission to the Department for Transport. And of course, during that process, between July and December, we will be engaging with the Audit and Governance Committee to help shape that, so that come October and then hopefully your agreement to the business plan in December, we have a rounded document that can go off. So the recommendation in the report is to, in effect, put in place an additional board meeting as part of our normal business in December.
Okay. Any comments on that, or are we happy to take that? General comments? Okay. Good. So we'll agree that then. Thank you very much. Brings us on to the Audit and Governance Committee. I couldn't read what was just gone in the chat, but
good morning.
Good morning. So I'm going to hand over to Councillor Dennis to introduce, please. Joy, thank you.
Hi, you see me, I've got bright light behind me here at Chichester.
Well done.
So we had some discussions. Our last audit meeting was Tuesday the 9th of April, and fundamentally there were three main papers that were presented. The first report, which you'll see as an appendix, set out how TFSC delivers value for money through the procurement, setting out the procurement rules, and how to deliver value for money and social value. The second report as an appendix set out how we delivered value for money for partners. It's designed in a brochure style so it can be shared with partners, members of the public, and it sets out a very high level value that TFSC delivers for the partners, and the analysis of transport spend per head in the South East in comparison with other areas. And these will be published on the TFSC website if the board agrees to the recommendations. It's a very interesting read. I hope you've all had a chance to read it. It certainly provoked quite a lot of discussion in the audit committee. The third report sets out the impact of inflation on projects and how this is impacting local authorities across the piece. And it builds on our evidence base and sets out recommendations for how we can support our partners. We also reviewed the draft annual report and we recommended the paper to the board for final approval before publishing on the website. Again, I think you'll see that later. And you may wish, I also, we reviewed the current finance position to the end of the year. And the committee agreed that if the DFT grant is substantially different, an extraordinary audit and governance committee meeting will be called to review the changes to the budget for 24-25. But our advice, our current recommendation, there's no substantive change. We were happy with what we saw and we were prepared to approve. We also reviewed the risk register. And we asked for some updates to the risk scoring matrix in advance of the next meeting before the register is presented to the board. We had some quite, again, an interesting conversation. And I think there's two recommendations coming from that you can see on the slide above. I don't know if anybody else, Rupert, you want to say anything else?
No, thank you, Councillor Dennis. I think the publication of the brochure on the website, I think would be quite helpful for partners. Leads into the Centre of Excellence work as well that we're doing. But it felt like a very positive governance committee meeting.
Thank you. I see there's a hand up and I can't see the gentleman's name. Sorry. Oh, Stuart. Is it Councillor Stuart? Kinstra?
Well, I certainly have got my hand up. I'm Tim Burr from the Southlands National Park, or from the Protected Landscapes. I just wanted to make one point in which I may sound like a cracked record, I think, because I'm tending to make this point rather often, that we have on page 32 a statement that in 2024-25, all our work is focused on enabling DFT to achieve its three key aims, one of which is reducing environmental impact. And the discussion in the papers is very much tends to focus on the carbon issue, which is very understandable because in various ways, transport is a big generator of carbon emissions. But there is rather more to the environment than that. For example, the proposal for a lorry park at Rootham Hill was turned down because of its impact on the quality of the Kent Downs AONB, as it then was. There is also the question of biodiversity net gain, which is a preoccupation now under the Environment Act with any development, including highway development. I'm not in any way wishing to detract from the papers or suggest that we do anything other than is recommended, but I just wanted to say again that I think we would, in the protected landscapes, welcome a little bit more breadth in terms of the way environmental impact was reviewed and audited.
Thank you. I don't disagree with you. Rupert, any comments from yourself?
Well, the only thing I would add, Councillor Dennis, is we absolutely understand that. And of course, it's for scheme promoters to ensure that through the planning application process or the DCO process that they're taking and having regard to the points that Tim raises about biodiversity net gain. And it's for planning authorities or inspectors to determine the impact on the environment, whether that is acceptable. So I think we would echo those points that schemes coming forward need to have regard to the environmental duties and obligations as well as the social.
Yeah, thank you.
Joy, you've got Daniel and then followed by Stuart.
Oh, Daniel, please.
Thank you, Joy. And then apologies, I'm calling you from Slovenia, which is why I might pop on and off camera, hopefully to keep it working. So really interesting paper, and I'm sorry, I unfortunately was unable to attend the last meeting. So apologies if I cover ground that I should know. But I wanted to just ask about this social value element. There's a tiny bit of ambiguity in the paper about the social value being 479k, or is it 32k? And it may just be language that's used. I want to infer that it's the 479k in the package of work, with a breakdown of things that are of economic, an economic flavour that influence social, and an environmental flavour, and so on. Have I interpreted that correctly?
I'm just looking at the papers, sorry. I think the total was 497.
Page 21.
479, yep. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it may just be then that it talks about social value as being, there's a table which on page 21, I think, yeah, which says social value is 32k, but it's social value as a part of the social value package.
Yeah.
So it maybe if this report is going to go out, maybe then that it would be good if that be clarified.
Perhaps just a slightly different heading. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Suggesting. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Make it clearer.
And then something else that could be clarified. Talking about investment funding in South East, and the tables mean there is nothing through CRSTS or CRUS or whatever, but the explanation for that is that there's no real urban centres, large urban centres in our region. Does that mean that BCP, Southampton, Portsmouth are not counted as large urban centres? Or is it just that we have not managed to get any funding even for them? When I say we, I mean the South East.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Daniel, you're right, that there's a massive urban conurbation between Southampton and Portsmouth. Most of the CRISP's funding has gone to the large cities, or predominantly in the Midlands and the North.
Yes.
And I think that we haven't been successful in the South East, or it doesn't fulfil the criteria. On the, if I'm just on the social value, the 479 is a commitment over 2 years. And what we're saying is, to date, the value is about 55,000 on social value. So you've got the social value intent over 2 years, and then what we've actually been successful in, if you like, since I think it's August last year.
Right. Okay. Yes. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Daniel. Was that your 2 questions?
It was my 2 major questions. I've got some other things I'll discuss later, so I'll let other people have a slot now. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Thanks very much.
Stuart was next.
Hi there, Stuart Kistrok from Network Rail. I just wanted to comment that there's a figure 2 in Appendix 2, I think it is, that talks about TFSE funding by transport mode. And I guess I live and breathe this, but I found it a little bit vague in terms of what the rail funding contribution was. So maybe, Rupert, you and I should just have a quick conversation offline, because there's about 4 different ways you could interpret that in terms of what government funding to rail is. And I just want to make sure we get the right number in the diagram.
Okay, thanks very much. Anybody else? Any more comments? Daniel, any more that you feel appropriate?
I actually wanted to comment on the fact that modal thing. I don't know how helpful that table, that bit of discussion is, because of course road is not a mode in the same way as bus or train is, and train, if it's Network Rail, is infrastructure, not TOCs. So do we need to look at the funding from government and also the investment by the operators? What is it trying to tell us? So that's quite good. And since I'm on, there is a table which takes the crusts out, and I think there's a minor error. It puts us 5th. We're actually 6th if you look at the numbers. That's table 2.
And so which table's that? Table 2, page?
Bear with me. Table 2 on page 40, I think.
Page 40, let's just check. Rupert, do we again take this one offline?
Yeah, it probably is more important than that. A bit too detailed.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's sensible. So Audit Governance Committee asked us whether we could break down the level of transport expenditure in the South East by comparison to the rest of the country. Because there isn't a single funding pot, because transport funding is quite siloed, it's quite challenging to get underneath all of the data. So I absolutely accept there's gaps in there. I'd really welcome a conversation with Stuart on rail infrastructure investment. And I think, Daniel, you make a good point about TOC investment as well, and whether we can somehow reflect that within there.
Yeah, I have to say, Rupert,
it's hard, I know.
Yeah, and looking at the table, you're quite correct. We're 6th, not 5th.
Yeah. Okay. Rob Humby's got his hand up.
Yeah, Keith, just wanted to thank Joy. As Joy said, we did have a very healthy and thorough debate previously, and a lot of those points about the value for money and the one voice have been built into the paper. So I just wanted to thank Joy and the team for incorporating those and noting that was not listened to, but I think sort of discussed and evolved around there about what the value is and what we all benefit from it. So it's a big thank you, Joy.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other, can I also thank you, Joy, and thank you to the members of the audit committee. I mean, there's an awful lot of work going on there, which I think is invaluable to all of us. Trevor, you've put your hand up before I go to the recommendations.
Oh, I have. Thank you. I just wanted to check on that. I think I didn't understand the comment about the budget, the total budget. Is that something that's essentially dropped from what was previously announced, or is there a presumption in the future look-ahead budget? I just wanted to get a feel for whether we've got a planned budget as we expected, or whether that is at risk or change. So I just want to understand the comment, the press as a side comment during the presentation, just better understand the budget, that is total budget that is available.
Okay. I think the if I'm wrong, Rupert will correct me, but I think the inference is the fact that we haven't had the settlement yet, and until the settlement's confirmed, we put a budget in based on what we expect it to be. Is that correct, Rupert?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if I'm understanding Trevor correctly, I think in relation to Transport for South East funding, that was what you agreed in the business plan. We based that on the assumptions set out in the Minister's letter to us a couple of years ago. And we're waiting to hear from Mark Harper what the grant settlement is. And again, I don't wish to put the DfT on the spot, but they might be add a bit to that. And the second point, if it's about broader transport budgets, then we know the statement of funds available for rail, or rather control period 7, shows reduced expenditure on renewals and enhancements. And most of the emphasis within that budget is on maintenance of the existing network. And I would imagine that, well, that's certainly going to be the theme for the next few years. On the National Highways expenditure, again, I think it's going to be quite challenging for capital over the next 5 years or so. And although we haven't seen the draft RIS, I'm not expecting it's going to be offering massive levels of investment in the South East or indeed nationally. So I think the mood music on capital expenditure it's quite pressured, it's quite constrained, and I think we're probably going to be in that for the next 5 years.
Okay. Thank you. Very helpful. Dan, and just to understand that, thank you.
Dan, do you have anything to add on the funding situation?
Yeah, not really, I'm afraid. I mean, just to come back on Rupert's budgetary points, so Rupert's quite correct. So we're waiting for a decision from ministers on budgets for the financial year 24-25. We are pushing for a decision on this. We understand that you're, very, very eagerly awaiting this. We're doing everything we can, but we don't currently have a response. But we're hoping to get one soon.
Thank you for that. That's good. Okay, so that clears the questions and the answers. So we have the recommendation before us on screen. Are we happy to agree those? And thank you again, Joy. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the financial update. And Sarah, I think you're going to introduce, please.
Yes, morning. Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. So yes, just the financial position for the end of year is the first part of the report. As Councillor Dennis said, this was taken to the Audit and Governance Committee earlier this month, although we were slightly earlier on in the process of confirming everything. The end of year finance position is set out in the table in Appendix 1 to the report, shows a total expenditure for TFSE of 2.5 million of this year, with 1.42 million of that being around the technical programme. The staffing budget was around 1 million, and then we spent a further 55,000 on communications and engagement activities, including our conference, the Connecting the South East conference, and then 29,000 on our operational costs through the year. So the table in Appendix 1 shows, therefore, we have a carry forward of £1.36 million for this financial year. Sorry, last financial year as we are now. This is a significant reduction from previous years where we had 1.7 million. And I think it's worth noting that of that 1.36 million carry forward, £600,000 is already committed for work that was started within the 23-24 financial year, but is still ongoing, has not yet finished. And 320,000 is ring fenced for specific elements of the technical programme that are due to start very, very soon. I'll pause there because that's the end of the position for 23-24 in case there are any questions before then moving on to the current financial year.
Any questions on the previous year? None showing, so.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on then to the budget, draft budget for 24-25. So as has been mentioned previously, the draft budget was approved at your December meeting. It was based on, as Rupert said earlier, the allocation set out in the Baroness Veer letter, which indicated a DfT grant settlement of £2.24 million for 2024-25. Also included were local contributions of 498,000, which again was already agreed by the board. Including the reserves that we are required to keep just in case anything we need to use them, and the carry forward. We have an operating budget of £4.5 million for 24-25. I should say that this is an update to what was in the December meeting because we now have the actual end of year figures where we have a slightly bigger carry forward than we had anticipated back in December. So what we've done is adjusted the figures to take account of that carry forward. That's why the numbers are slightly bigger. In terms of what that budget is allocated on, there's a commentary in your paper, which I won't go into in detail, but suffice to say it's the majority of it goes on elements of the technical programme, predominantly the three sort of big priority areas around the transport strategy refresh, development of the analytical framework, and the Centre of Excellence. The budget, of course, also includes allocations for communications engagement and operational activities. The staff allocation is slightly more than in previous years, and that reflects the fact that we have the whole complement of TFSE staff in place for the whole of the year for the first time ever, which is good news. This budget is still in draft. As we mentioned just a moment ago, we haven't yet received the confirmation of our grant from DfT, but if we do, and the grant is at 2.24 million, then that is the proposed budget for the year. As Councillor Dennis said earlier, the Audit and Governance Committee did agree that if the DfT grant were to be significantly different from what we had expected, then we would take the draft budget back through the Audit and Governance Committee for their approval. But if it came out broadly in line with what was expected, then they were happy with that. So the table in Appendix 2 sets out the allocation of the budget across the year. And just one sort of further thing to add, that as we don't yet have our grant, we are now in a position of working through which elements of technical work we can keep going at the moment, and which elements we need to I don't think there's anything we need to pause, but there are some elements that we can't yet start until we actually have confirmation of the grant. So that's the sort of work in progress to manage our budget as we, in this time before we actually get confirmation of the grant.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure we've said it before, and we will continue to make the point to ministers, or I do whenever I get the opportunity, that actually early budgets and being able to have a 12-month plan as opposed to shortening it down to a 8 or hopefully only a 10-month plan would be really beneficial. So we'll keep that pressure on. Trevor, you have your hand up.
I do, and thank you for that summarization. I really appreciate that. The point, and I think you've probably touched on this and probably explained it well enough, but the number for staffing, I noticed in the last year's staffing cost, the budget, the actual was less than the budget, and this year it's an uplift of say 300k on staffing. Is that because you've got a bigger programme, or not just you've got a full complement of staff? There's actually more to deliver within that staff budget?
I mean, certainly that the amount of work we are doing is increasing year on year, but the difference in the two numbers is to reflect the fact that we have the whole complement of staff in place for the whole year. When we did the budget that we had 23-24, that was adjusted when we got less grant than we were anticipating. And at that time, we actually knew that we were experiencing some difficulties in recruiting for some of the posts and that they wouldn't actually be there in the entire year. So rather than having to take money from the technical programme, we were able to reduce the staffing budget to reflect the situation that we found ourselves in, which was that a number of key posts didn't actually get recruited to the latter part of 2023. This year, of course, we've got everybody in place for the whole year. So that's why the staffing budget is increased.
Okay. Any other questions? There's no one showing on the screen currently. Oh, here we go. I've got to put my glasses on now. It's Councillor Humby.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Yeah, Sarah, I was going to make the point about sort of the underspends, but you clarified that, and it sort of relates to that last question as well about capacity to spend, but you made it clear about sort of projects in train and in terms of then what the reserves are. Sometimes it's just worth making that point a little bit clearer, because when people read these papers sort of briefly in terms of understanding that you've had underspends, you want to make sure the right people are understanding that we are spending the money for obvious reasons we just discussed about when we look at our settlements, and just making it maybe a little bit clearer. But you answered the second bit with that other very good question about having the staff in place to make sure we have the capacity to do it. It might be worth just giving a little bit of thought about making that potentially a little bit clearer maybe, but otherwise excellent report. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Yeah.
Thank you. No other questions? Again, I mean, I think the fact that we've been able to deliver the programme that we set out on budget and in fact adjust along the way just shows how flexible TFSE is, but also acknowledge that it hasn't been done without a lot of work by the staff that in some cases pick up extra work, and in other cases we don't have the people in. Now having a full complement, it should in theory make life easier. In practice, I'm sure they'll still all be under immense pressure at certain times during the year. So genuine thank you from all of us for that work. So Rupert.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I think it's important to make the point that the grant funding settlement, it would be helpful to have that sooner rather than later, because we're running into the financial year. One of the reasons we've had these carryovers in the past is because historically funding has been received quite late on in the year, so it doesn't allow you to put in place the procurement. I know colleagues in the department know this, but the risk for us is that once you get into August and September, the work programme will have to slow down quite considerably. And so the importance of getting the settlements in a timely manner, which is why we put in the previous paper, we put the new December board meeting in, is to make sure that we are ready come start the financial year.
As you say, I think our colleagues on the call are well aware of that. We will, at every opportunity, make that point to the ministers as and when we can. So, but it is, as I said earlier, trying to get a programme that delivers in 12 months is the important part. So, colleagues, are we happy to accept the recommendations that are on screen now? No one against? All right. Thank you. I'll take that. And we come on to agenda item 8, which is the annual report. And Keir, I think you're going to introduce this, please. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've drafted the annual report working with Councillor Dennis and the Audit and Governance Committee. So it contains all the usual sections the board will have seen in previous annual reports. So the finance figures Sarah just referenced, all the information about the work we've completed, and organisational structure, etc. There are just 2 new sections that it's worth drawing the board's attention to. So for the first time, we've got the analysis of transport spend in the South East versus other regions, which, as we heard previously, is complicated. I think we'll continue to do work on that to refine that going forward. And the other new section is an analysis of the value delivered for local authorities through the Centre of Excellence, which we will aim to capture regularly in annual reports going forward.
You're there?
I'm there. That's
right. That's it. Sorry.
We just want the board's approval to publish it on the website.
Right. Sorry. Short introduction. Sorry, Keir. Apologies. Any questions or comments on the annual report? Again, thanks for all those involved. No. So we'll agree the recommendation as printed.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you. We come to agenda item 9, which is the business representation. And Rupert, I think you're going to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So members will be aware that the previous LEP structure has been dissolved, and in effect, strategic economic functions passed to the upper tier local authorities. But we know that business representation has been welcomed historically, and we've been ably served by Daniel Ruiz and Vince Lucas from Enterprise M3 and South East LEP, respectively. We want to ensure we keep business representation going, and so the paper recommends that we establish a business advisory group, and that you delegate to me the development of the terms of reference in conjunction with Daniel and Vince to provide the framework for a business advisory group, and to ensure that we can still receive business representation through the board structure. That's in essence the recommendations, Jim.
Thank you. And I think it is really vitally important because we've had good value from business representation going forward. Just because there's a change in circumstances, it would be a shame to lose that. So, Daniel.
Yes, Vince sends his apologies that he can't be here today, but one of the things we have been able to do is tag team and make sure that there is representation by at least one of us, and we've been very pleased to do that. And I have to say, it's both stimulating and rewarding working with all of you. I also want to say that I'm looking forward to this effectively being a step up in a way, because this business advisory group that Rupert's talking about has a lot of potential to do more than we've done previously. If we can make sure that we're tapping into not just the formal EPs, what they've become, but other business groups, to make sure that TFSE can be as relevant as possible to business while continuing to serve all its other stakeholders. So Vince and I are looking forward to continuing to work with you should you decide to endorse what Rupert just said. No assumptions made. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Any other comments or questions? I think it's the logical way forward. Nobody else is saying it's not. So are we happy to endorse the recommendations as printed?
Approve.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Very good.
Agreed, yeah.
This morning. It'll go wrong sooner or later. But thank you again, and thank you, Daniel, and we'll pass it on. I'm sure Rupert and the team will be in contact to set up some formal consultation shortly. Thanks again. Right, so we come to the communications and engagement plan for 24-25, and Duncan, I think you're going to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, colleagues. The plan sets out our ongoing objectives and also measurements for 2024-25 in terms of communications and stakeholder engagement. It also includes a number of targets regarding increasing our social media figures, podcast listens, and meetings with local authorities and MPs as well. I'll take it as read that colleagues have seen the plan and are happy to approve it, but I'm here to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and I must say the amount of engagement we've had and continue to get in is really helpful and an improvement, and especially the work with our MPs. And so, anybody else got any ideas or comments? Rob.
Sorry. Yeah, just to say, I think it's a really good plan. It's something that, has been my pet thing about communications, and it's all about perception, as people think you're doing something else, and then that's what you're doing rather than what you're actually doing. So I think it's really good to see this. I think it's a really good plan, and we should all recognise the importance of the comms. So I'm very pleased with that. Yeah, so great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor?
Yeah, I want to echo those points as well. That's really positive. And I think it's absolutely an insight-driven approach, etc. I just want to get a feel for the times for practical comms. I know some of the schemes are probably even over decades, but I just wanted to understand how we better sort of look at the narrative as we go forward to ensure that we're not just suddenly doing a scheme and giving about 6 months' notice it's going to happen, or 2 years' notice, whatever it is, but actually the narrative continues and we get a good, which is what this does in many levels of strategy about comms. But it's just, how do we keep the narrative live so the public are aware of something quite major is going to happen and when it's likely to happen? I'm not a specialist on comms, but what's your thoughts in terms of making sure that we keep alive the narrative before it drops off people's agendas and then suddenly reappears? If that makes sense. That's a question.
I think it's a bit about the here and now leading to the future rather than it suddenly appearing again. Duncan, have you got any thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, I mean, obviously a lot of our work is long term, so it's a case of making sure that we keep communicating and updating with our various partners. Then when there's something to shout about, we have it in sight, and we can start to put in the building blocks to look at how we're going to communicate that to the people that's relevant to, in terms of talking to the local media and talking to other organisations in the area. That's something that might be in our SIP is becoming increasingly a reality. So it's an ongoing bit of work. And then we look at the various tools we might use to communicate that. It might be a good old-fashioned press release. It might be doing a site visit to somewhere where the work is taking place or about to finish. And we promote that via our social media, our newsletters, and possibly even our podcast.
Thank you. Okay, is that okay, Trevor? Yeah. I can't see who. The next one is Councillor, and I can't see I've got nothing else on my. So it's CS. Please. There we go, Simon. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
I see you now on my screen. It doesn't come up, but there you go.
No problem. Thanks very much. Just a very quick point. I mean, I really welcome this, but I just sort of referring to particularly probably the part where it's talking about managing relationships. Medway is currently in the middle of producing our local plan, and we do struggle sometimes with the relationship between Department of Transport and DLUC, and managing that relationship seems to be an issue. So I just wondered if TFSE can help us in that process. And I'm quite sure there's a lot of other local authorities in a similar position. So it's about managing those government relationships, if you like, and helping us cope with those. But that's a little point there, I think, to bring in. Thanks very much.
Rupert wants to come back, and I'll comment after Rupert.
I think that relationship between departments is crucial. And when we were developing the strategy and the strategic investment plan, our DFT colleagues helpfully arranged for some engagement sessions with DLUC. So it's an ongoing process, and I suspect Keith is going to talk about his recent letter to a particular Secretary of State, and I'll end there.
No. I mean, I sometimes think we're bugged because, Simon, I've just written to Michael Gove saying that just with devolution in mind generally, how subnational transport boards and specifically Transport for the South East could actually help that conversation. We would want to be included in it. I'm awaiting a response, so I will share that with you as soon as I get it. But I'm sure I'm being bugged now. I'll get paranoid shortly. But Dan, you were going to emphasise something, please.
Yeah, no, interesting point. Thank you, Simon. And I just wondered briefly if we think a lot about the relationship with DLUC as clearly a department with which we have a lot of sort of business in common, and it works better in some areas than it does in others. And I think there are things we're working on, and we're certainly very alive to it. But I just wondered if there was anything particular when you mentioned whether the issues you were finding was your own relationship with DFT and your relationship with DLUC, or whether it was a relationship between DFT and DLUC that was causing you problems. Of either comment for now or perhaps to feed into Rupert and the team just to see if we can help with that.
I think it's a mixture of the two, to be honest. I mean, I hate to exactly make it more complex, but I mean, a good example is sort of holding position on housing numbers and transport and capacity of roads and junctions and stuff like that. That's a big problem for us at the moment, particularly on the A2M2 junction. So that's a particular issue that we're trying to deal with. And currently, we've got an issue around housing, large-scale housing developments being held in sort of limbo at the moment over that sort of issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Dan. Any other comments on comment? I mean, again, thank you for the plan, and Duncan, and the way we're going. I think we all agree communications is a vital part of what we do, and long may it remain. And I think some of the modern technology, as I say, podcasts and use of social media is actually working. I didn't think I'd ever say that, but I actually find them quite interesting. So let's keep going. And that's not just the ones I appear in, but just in case there's any doubt in Rob's mind, because I can see him quite happy there. So, colleagues, are we happy to agree the recommendations as printed? So it's we've got the communication plan, so we agree that?
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. So we come to agenda item 11, Centre of Excellence, and welcome to Emily. Emily, I think you're going to introduce, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yep, so I just got a presentation for you all today. So I'll just quickly take you through that. And so within this, we have the contents here. So we'll be providing you with an update on the Centre of Excellence to date. So talking you through the governance and stakeholder engagement and the management, but more particularly, we're focusing on the next step, so formal launch in particular. So if I just take you through, so for the progress update, you can see here that the project was split up into 5 tasks. So the first section was around the delivery plan, and then we then summarised that within a plan and engagement report for all of the steering group, which they approved. And then we also then started on the actual creation of the site. And now we're working through task 4 within the launch plan. Task 5 is looking at the future agreements, so we can present that to you at the next board. Here you can see a snapshot of the platform itself. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of work and design that's gone into that. So it's just quite exciting, nice and visually engaging based on the feedback of the users. So it has been tested by all of the steering group, the DFT, and then also the wider TFSE group as well. So here you can just see the stakeholder engagement to date. It's worth highlighting that there is a desire for the Centre of Excellence to be co-designed to ensure that the content is enhanced and supported and makes good use as well of the existing tools that are already out there at a national and local level. At the workshop that was held in September 2023, the scale of the platform was discussed, and it was agreed that it should just go beyond offices within the authorities and actually be extended to academics, national agencies and professional institutes as well. So we have met with all of those professional institutes, which includes CCARE, CIHT, TPS and ICE. And we have agreed that they can all become tier 2 users. So essentially that means they won't have access to the full site, but they'll still be able to use some of those resources that they will be providing and other resources that might be on there as well. So they'll see a restricted version. Also just worth noting as well that last year we did host a regional universities meeting, just focusing on the Centre of Excellence to get in their support. So they have agreed to be part of the platform, and then all were issued with a survey. And so then within that survey, we have had responses from a number of universities with their commitment and what they might be able to provide in terms of innovation and assets. So it's been really helpful to date so far. So just to keep on with the stakeholder engagement, just because it has been so important as part of this process, we have also spoken with National Highways, Network Rail and Active Travel England. So we are still working on that partnership so we can manage expectations of the users and what their role will be within the platform itself. But at the moment, there has been agreement to be able to share case studies and provide future training. Additionally, there was a survey that went out to all of the registered users of the Centre of Excellence, and currently we're at about 80 now, actually, which is really exciting. So the results from this capability survey will inform us and help us prioritise to develop a pipeline of content that will be identified within the skills gaps. So this went live on the 5th of April for 2 weeks, and so far we have received 32. The results so far are showing that the business case development and national plans and guidance are top skills for us to focus on. So that's what we'll be prioritising once the site goes live. And then we'll be using the rest of the results to build that pipeline. So there is also other examples such as use of AI in transport planning. We'll continue to use this survey annually, and it will inform the pipeline of content throughout, but also used to inform the KPIs as well. So that touches on what was mentioned within the audit and governance steps. So we will be using the Centre of Excellence to capture sort of fiscal benefits for local authorities. So here within the launch and management, so task 4 commenced in April, and it's focusing on that launch and also management of the platform once it goes live. And we're also holding this launch event and running activities and developing new content and monitoring and evaluation throughout each stage of the platform. And that will remain the focus for the rest of the year. So as the project develops and moves into the management phase, we'll be looking at the future funding arrangements. And also just to note as well that we have tried to reallocate some of that resource from Arup so that it moves away from the management of the site and actually onto the content creation, as we have the capability to be able to take on this management in-house. So just looking at the content development, this just shows you the process. So with the Centre of Excellence platform being built and finalised, our focus is now drawn onto that content creation. And this just shows you the process in which it goes through. So it will be an evidence-based approach to inform the process, and using the results from the previously mentioned survey, we'll be utilising subject matter experts as part of the consortium bid that was awarded last year to do some of those capability solutions. So it's the required capability outcomes that will determine what is appropriate and what type of solution is needed. So as I mentioned, there will be a formal launch for this platform, which we would like to invite all of the members of the Partnership Board to, and it will be hosted on the 18th of June. So this will be held at the Great Minster House at the DFT, and this will be from, sorry, there's a typo just on that slide there, be from 9 until 11:30. And so we are intending to invite a minister, and then hopefully you will have the opportunity to speak with that minister after the session as well. And then also there will be a follow-up as well, which I think will be touched on in the Transport Strategy Refresh item for a workshop with the members as well. But essentially, the purpose to launch this is to build momentum for the platform, to raise awareness within the sector, including those partner organisations I mentioned earlier. So we will be inviting them alongside the universities to demonstrate the value of the platform, and also for the Department of Transport as well, who have funded the Centre of Excellence. Mm-hmm. So we hope that the launch will feature a talk from the Department Transport Minister or a senior official to just demonstrate the support and buy-in for the Centre of Excellence. And so we are hoping that we'll be able to see many of you attend. And then, as I say, you can attend that workshop afterwards as well. So here we just touch on that element. So the Transport Strategy Refresh will also be held at the Great Minster House, and that will be from 11:30 until 4. I think that there is a plan for it to finish a little bit earlier, but we can sort of set that out in a little bit more detail based on the agreement at today's meeting. And we thought it just important to remind you of those fiscal benefits as well. We know it's been something that's been... I think it's really important to demonstrate those benefits that the Centre of Excellence will be providing. So within those monitoring of the KPIs, we'll be analysing what tools and data local authorities are able to use without having to request it from a consultant or elsewhere. So hopefully it will also be a time-saving exercise as well. And that is it from me, Chair. Thank you. Got the recommendations back up on the slide for you. Sorry, Chair, I think you just...
Sorry, yeah, no, sorry, I turned it off. I can hear a bit of background noise. Apologies for that. Thank you, Emily. And questions or comments? And just us to reiterate, the 18th of June, if we can make it to DFT, would be really helpful. As I say, hopefully we'll get a minister along, but it is the launch of a major piece of our work. So if you can put that in your diaries, we'd much appreciate it. We'll come back to you on that. Any other questions or comments? Dan?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thanks, Emily, for that, and just thanks to you and the team for the development you've got to on this. Looking like a really, really good piece of work, and as you know, something that we think is really, really important, that we hope will deliver a lot of value. And just a sort of a word to all the other members on the call. I mean, it's great the work that TFSC have put into sort of developing this. The Centre of Excellence, but ultimately, it needs to be used. It needs to deliver benefit, and you'll only really work out the benefit you can get from it by using it. And I'm sure these things will iterate a bit over time, and certain things will work well, and certain things might need a bit of that classic user testing. But the purpose of this is to really get some use out of it and share knowledge. And a good point that you made, Emily, towards the end there is that we're talking to all the STBs about Centre of Excellence, and the idea is to create these to avoid duplication and to create these different centres of excellence in different places, which can in together provide a really, really great resource. But thanks to TFSC for this work, and just really encourage everybody to sort of get involved and use it.
It is, and it will become hopefully another day-to-day tool for people to use. And so again, I just think having all that evidence there will undoubtedly make our lives easier as we go forward. Rob, followed by Rupert.
Muted.
You're still muted.
You're muted.
What I said was really good.
Yeah.
Apologies, I keep it on here. I just wanted to say, completely agree with Dan. There's you've got to. We keep talking about value for money, and this is a resource that is sat there that if we use it, we can demonstrate that value. But I also wanted to say, very well reported, Emily. Very impressed. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just to say, if board members are in agreement with this, we will send out an invite for the 18th of June. And it's also worth noting, and this is coming up in the Transport Strategy Refresh, to ensure that we maximise your time in London. We're holding it in the DfT offices, and we'll follow that up with a Transport Strategy Refresh update to ensure that members are engaged in that, as well as attending the Centre of Excellence launch.
Thank you. Trevor?
Yes, in some ways you probably answered this question, but I'll word it probably in a way. So in the report 9.1, the ambition is to deliver economies of scale through sharing resources and best practice. And you set up KPI around measures of cost savings around local authorities as a result of the Centre of Excellence. So I get that in principle, and I know you expanded out to more to academic institutions, for instance. So as you broaden the number of stakeholders within this process, do you see? I guess the first year is more about getting everybody in, but are we still on track to get those cost efficiencies within this process, or is that still work in progress as we move towards more cost efficiencies for local authorities?
Emily?
Thank you. Yeah, so we're still able to, I think take your point. So I think that it will still be a work in progress, but we will also be able to capture high level fiscal benefits in the first year, because we will be providing tools such as the EVCI Locate tool from TfN, where we will be provided with licenses. So, if the local authorities were to buy each of those, you'd be able to demonstrate that cost saving there. And then also with the commitment from the local authorities as well, there's already quite a lot of data sharing going on from operators and movement within their region. So I think that we will be able to, but we're hoping in future that will continue to improve.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? Again, we have the recommendations on screen, so are we happy to agree those?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks again, Emily. It's very good. We look forward to seeing as many of you as possible on the 18th of June. And as Rupert said, the invites following our agreement now can go out. So that's really good. Moving on to agenda item 12, which is the analytical framework update. And Joshua, I think you're going to give us that, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And good morning, everyone. And for those who don't know me yet, my name is Joshua Jiao, and I joined the TFC as an analysis manager last December. So really pleasure to meet you all. And we prepared a paper on the update on the progress and the further development of the analytical framework, which was initially presented in January last year. It is a slightly technical paper, so I've got a short presentation, hopefully give you a quick overview on what we have done so far and the progress. So if I try to take control, hope this will make it work. Yep. Thank you. So in a short presentation, I will be covering the rationale and the purpose of the analytical framework, which including the findings from various studies we have done so far, and an overview on an updated analytical framework roadmap. And last but not least, initiative on the Transport Modeling and Appraisal Forum, which is designed to address the challenges identified by the local officers. So first of all, I think it's worth spending a couple of minutes just to remind everyone why we need it. So I think the fundamental reason is we need evidence to support our decisions, whether it's based on the data or the models developed from that data. And probably more direct reason, I'm sure you all are aware of a robust transport model is required when making business cases for applying for the central government funding in particular. And it is crucial to delivering the schemes and the interventions in our strategic investment plan. However, the reality is most local models need to be updated due to either their age or, as we all know, the travel behavior changes due to COVID, etc. Unfortunately, models and the tools are complex and typically take years rather than months to update or develop. So there's really no time to wait. So the development of TFC analytical framework is to help you and your officers reduce time and the costs required by develop the local models. So just a bit of background on how we got to where we are now. So the original roadmap for developing the analytical framework was endorsed at the partnership board meeting on January 23rd, 2023, and several projects were identified and agreed upon as priorities for 2023-24. So this update incorporates additional information we have learned during that progress. And it is to ensure that analytical framework can still provide the most relevant and cost-efficient solutions to the challenges faced by TFC and all our partners. So what has been showing on these slides is the progress we have made so far. So the green boxes on these slides show the projects that have been completed, and the blue boxes shows the projects are still in progress. I won't go into details of all the projects because they are all in the report appendix. However, I'd like to highlight a couple of reviews. One is the modeling capability and the capacity review, and another is the data management plan review. Both included extensive engagement with your officers, and a very big thank you to all your officers who involved in the interviews, which provided us with valuable information to update the challenges, which is showing on the next slides. So basically what shows on the table on the left-hand side, it shows the original analytical gaps presented at the 2022-23 partnership board meeting. And on the right-hand column, it shows the updated analytical gaps. And what this table really tells is the studies reaffirm the previous identified gaps, and it also have identified a couple of more new challenges. And specifically, one is the disparities in the in-house modeling capabilities across the region. And secondly, there's a common design for upskilling, particularly to become more intelligent clients. So based on those challenges, we have identified the 6 main objectives for the analytical framework, which shows on the slides. So first of all, optimize the resources for LTAs, and this is to address in particular the disparities in the in-house capability and the capacities across the region by utilizing existing tools and the resources as much as possible. And secondly, upgrading strategic tools. This is to address the national and the regional strategy priorities by developing tools to support things like new mobilities and decarbonizations, for example. And the third, comprehensive impacts evaluation. So the tools and the models in the analytical framework will be designed to evaluate the combined impacts of multimodal cross-boundary interventions at a regional level in particular. And the data management plan, that's a plan to ensure data is robust and easy to share. And it is the fundamental of all the model and the tools. And the next, to build an accurate and consistent model and the tools to support evidence-based business case and the decision-making process. And finally, the supporting all your local officers in building their analytical skills and capabilities. So in the appendix in the report, we have set out all the tasks and including the tasks commissioned and completed in 2023-24 and a plan for the next 2 years. So very briefly, the roadmap set out a brief description of the tasks, if the tasks in the previous plan or is additional task, and with a very brief justification on why it has been added in, and the analytical objectives, as mentioned earlier, that each task is trying to address, and the extent to which a task offers an opportunity for cross-sub-STBs collaboration or pooling resources, and finally the kind of indicative cost spend per year for deliver each tasks. And I just want to come back to my starting point that this can help to save the costs for develop local models and the tools. And I'm sure many of you, if not all, have encountered a significant bill for developing a transport model. However, the breakdown of how the money is spent might not always be clear. So what is showing on these slides is an indicative picture of components of a typical modeling project and the percentage of costs for each of the components. So at TFC, although we cannot replace the need for the local models, but we can help develop some of the components. The components which show in green boxes will be the key focuses of our development of analytical framework in the next 2 years. And the numbers in the bracket, if you can see, corresponding to the project IDs in the roadmap table in the appendix of the board paper. These components are either identified as common gaps in the LTAs, for example, the updated travel demand data, or are better suited to the regional level, for example, the rail and freight modeling. So we will use part of our fundings from the business plan once granted by DFT to develop those components. So there's no extra costs for you all, but which in return those will accordingly reduce the time and the costs of your local development of your local models. So just before I finish, I'd like to bring your attention to one of the initiatives, the Southeast Transport Modeling and Appraisal Forum. This initiative addresses multiple objectives like optimizing the resources, ensuring accuracy and the consistencies of local models and building skills, etc. So we aim to create a safe environment for technical officers to share their experience and knowledges, find opportunities to leverage existing tools and resources and promote consistent and accuracy across in the region. And also at the forum, we will discuss industry developments and their practical application, which will in turn tailor the development of the analytical framework. So the analytical framework roadmap, like many other TFC document, is a live document that will continue evolving as we learn more from various projects and studies. And we reached out to the relevant offices in your authorities to gauge interest, topic, and potential contributions. Again, a big thank you to your officers. We have received a really good response to the call. So the first forum is then planned for the 10th of July, and an invitation has already been sent out to the lead officers who has expressed their interests. So yeah, that's everything from me. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you very much. It just shows how complex and how wide the opportunities are within Transport for the South East, and it's something that either really excites you or passes you by. But the thing that can't happen is many of these schemes can't go without this analytical work. And so thank you for bringing it all together. Trevor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joshua, for a very helpful study and assessment. Perhaps frame this question. As you're fully aware, a model is as good as the data. As the data put in, you get the data, you get out the results. But so, with that point accepted, perhaps a model is as good as the questions you ask it as well. And you referenced modal shift, which is one of the things which I guess the policy steer as a region we think is very important. But to what extent does it sort of capture the discussion around how much rail freight should be used as opposed to road freight? For instance, can we look at those sorts of questions and to help steer the policy for the region? So what extent is this helping us ask the right questions? I suppose that's the question I'm trying to frame, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Do you want to answer that one, or do you want Rupert to, and then we'll come back on to Joshua, on to Simon next. Oh, no, Tim, then Simon.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because the freight modeling is always a key challenge because of the data. And so that's another model. One reason, one kind of function of the model is try to interpret the data or find the insights from the data. But there's another functionality of the model is try to fill in the data gaps, where in particular there's no data or limited data. Then that's normally when we try to use model to answer some of those questions. And whether shift from road freight traffic to rail, that's a really good question. And I believe my colleague Kate leads a study, another study on the freight studies, in particular focusing on different type of kind of freight transport, and what is the opportunities to shift not just rail and waterborne and some of the other modes. So it's still in the early stage, but that's definitely something on our radar, and we are trying to collect more evidence and studies. And also something might be worth noting is at the DFT level, also there's some studies on how to enhance the multimodal kind of freight modeling. So we will keep our eye very close on that and see whether any results can be utilized at TFC, at the Southeast region level.
Thank you. I'll just go back to my original list now, and it's Simon, then Tim. Simon?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Joshua. That's really, really useful. But I'm one of those people who loves this sort of thing, so I apologise for enthusiasm for this in advance. But I just think it's in fact, this underpins a huge amount of the work of the whole of Transport for South East. But not just that, but at local level as well. And you mentioned at the start about having more intelligent clients, which is always a nice thing to have. And how this sort of fundamentally underpins a lot of the evidence for our decision making. But I think there's a lot of co-benefits behind this. I'm not really asking questions, just making a couple of points, Chair. One is about sharing best practice and data across the region, which is really important. But it would be helpful at one level to have some case studies of where things have really worked.
Colleagues, we are asked to note recommendations. In doing that, we are agreeing the updated route map for the development of the analytical work. So are we happy to approve as printed?
Approved.
Tim, did you want to come back or you've just turned?
No, sorry, I'm trying to switch it off.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
There you go.
Succeeded at last.
Well done. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We come to the transport strategy refresh update, and James, I think you're going to introduce, please.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Chair. So what I was going to do, just by way of kind of quick presentation, is I was going to bring out some key highlights in the report on the work which has been done so far before we can get into the kind of more significant conversation around the structure of the strategy. So in terms of the report itself and the work done today, I'll assume kind of a lot of people can take it as read, but it's just to kind of highlight really that we are very close to the production of the Need for Intervention report. In fact, it will be issued to members of Transport Strategy Working Group this week, the first draft of it, which has been a result of collection of a wide variety of evidence on transport-related and non-transport-related matters over the last few months, undertaken by Steer. We are also very close to the conclusion of our work, specifically engaging with socially excluded groups, where we've been trying to understand some of their challenges in a lot more detail, and working with them to identify what are like the key attributes of an inclusive kind of transport strategy. And that's certainly that work from a personal perspective has actually been extremely enlightening, and kind of identified a lot of challenges which you may not necessarily think of in terms of access for many socially excluded groups. Obviously, we can think of things like physical access to stations, for example, but there's a lot of other challenges which have a much more nuance than we thought it would do so. I should also mention some of the work which we've done on engagement. So we've issued a Your Voices survey, which has been issued publicly, which is trying to get flavour from people across the southeast on on some of the major transport challenges which they face. Again, it's all to form part of this evidence base. Now, in the report, it does mention that we got, I think there's about 120 in the first week. Responses in the first week. Having spoken to Jamie McSorley, our engagement manager, last week, that response is up to about 650 now. And every time I speak to her, it usually goes up by about 100 or so. So it's probably gone up to north of 700 this week. And so we've been getting a really, really good response rate on that. Bearing in mind, obviously, it's primarily online and messaging some of our key stakeholders, as well as our wider contacts group as well, group of contacts as well. So we've been getting really good, some really good response on that, as well as obviously we've had some really good engagement through Transport Strategy Working Group and Senior Officer Group of the of the different partners. We've also recently, as the board members will note in the report, have started the process of refreshing the scenarios as well. So we held a workshop a few weeks ago with members of Senior Officer Group and Transport Strategy Working Group in London to discuss some of the drivers of change. This is going to be followed up by a couple of other workshops over the coming couple of months or so, whereby we're going to be starting to turn some of those drivers of change into some refreshed transport scenarios. Members of the board may remember the discussion which took place last July, whereby this was seen as quite an important piece of work, because obviously when we did the original scenarios which underpinned the original plan, then the world's changed quite radically since then. And so we thought it prudent to refresh those scenarios, and we have just commenced that work, and the engagement of, as I said, of members of Transport Strategy Working Group and Senior Officer Group has been extremely positive to date. And obviously, as has been mentioned before, we are also going to be running a workshop with Partnership Board members as well. So that's the update in terms of the technical work which has taken place to date. So what I'm going to focus now on the following few slides is the second part of the paper, which is around options for actually writing the transport strategy itself, i.e. its content and what it's going to look like. Now, for those of you who have been involved in the process of writing transport strategies before, what it actually says is pretty important. How it looks and how it's structured and what it's focused upon is extremely important, because obviously this informs the content of the transport strategy. And we've been having some discussions within the project team, within TFSE, and obviously with Steer as well, about what this strategy could look like, bearing in mind obviously all the challenges which have been coming out in the NEFA intervention report, the challenges with many of our local authority members through discussions both through Transport Strategy Working Group and offline over the last few months, but also just reflecting on the conversation which has been had at previous board meetings around a willingness for the transport strategy to be slightly bold and to come more forthright in its ask. But as I said, it's much kind of bolder than the current transport strategy, which, whilst it's good, obviously there was a general willingness kind of expressed as part of that discussion. So what I want to do on these slides is just to go through the different options which we have considered with our consultant team before coming to our preferred option for how we then want to write the transport strategy, and what we want to do in this session is to get your approval for that preferred option. But obviously we are going to be kind of working with you in the future on this. So if it's possible to click through looking through to the next slide. So the kind of first couple of options for the actual for the content of the transport strategy. For those of you who, as I said, have written transport strategies before, seen transport strategies, these might be very familiar to you. So the first one is a movement-based framework, and the second one is a modal-based framework, where the movement-based framework is basically you structure your transport strategy based upon different movement types. So you have one section on, for example, on strategic trips, long-distance trips. You might have one on interurban, might have one on local trips, and then you have like different themes. Different themes come under each movement. So the advantages of this is that, it keeps a focus on enhancing connectivity where it's needed, and also it's easy to kind of map out different interventions within the strategy on it. Disadvantage is that it's not particularly optimized for different geographic areas and less focused on presenting like overarching themes, you could say, like, via accessibility, environmental impact, which obviously we discussed. Modal framework, again, very clear, very easy to people who've written transport strategies before, is that strategy is structured by mode. So you have one section on highways, one section on railways, one section on buses, one section on active travel, etc. Very traditional way of writing the transport strategy. It's a known entity, easy to interventions against, and again, it's very applicable to existing transport planning practice. But it also may lead to the transport strategy being slightly more reactive to where a provision is an issue. For example, focusing on where bus provision is an issue, or where strategic rail is an issue, may lead to some siloed thinking. So, for example, it's great to have something, let's say, on railways, but when that section purely kind of focuses on railways, it doesn't consider transport in the round. But also, again, that point on overarching themes. I will try and get through these as quickly as I possibly can and not go through all necessary details. So option 3, place-based framework, and option 4 is the movement and place-based framework. Place-based is that there are lots of different place types across the southeast, and therefore the strategy should be based upon that. So, as I said, an obvious advantage there is that it acknowledges that that CFSE area is extremely varied, and we have different types of places, and different interventions might work differently in different places. But also at the same time, if it takes that hyperlocal, also that slightly more hyperlocal focus on it, it misses out the could miss out big strategic issues and lead to fragmented approaches. Plus, also there's a lot of discussion on what the different place types are, which is inevitably which happens. And movement and place essentially tries to blend the movement and place-based framework. So it tries to get the best of both worlds, but also it then has the issues of both worlds as well. So again, I won't go into those in detail. Option 5 is a people and goods place framework. So the strategy is, so in the first one, that one is, strategy is structured around different user groups, commuters, leisure travellers, freight operators, etc. So a good good point about this is that proposed interventions are relevant and effective at supporting different user needs, i.e. it's based upon different user needs, and disadvantages are that by focusing on those user needs, it kind of then goes into issues around different trade-offs between different user groups, and different user groups having different priorities, and also users have different priorities between them, which may necessarily be in conflict with one another. Option 6 is slightly more thematic, so where we focus is structured by objectives and outcomes, which are applicable across all the different place and movement types. So, for example, holistic and integrated. Its good part is a holistic and integrated approach, helps to prioritise different interventions based upon the contribution to outcomes. And disadvantages is that it could lead to siloed thinking and less focus on integration. Now, the final option is something which we call the big missions framework, which you can probably kind of understand that this is from the report that this is our preferred options. And so the idea come around big missions, and I should state right now, we're still kind of a bit flexible in the name, is that the strategy is structured around a series of key topics, which could be modal, they could be thematic. But the thing is with a mission, it's very much focused upon delivery, which has a single coherent narrative and set of objectives addressed by a range of different interventions. So, for example, you might, let's say, have in a traditional transport strategy, you might have an objective which might be, decarbonisation, whereas within a mission, that decarbonisation, basically that approach on decarbonisation could be slightly more focused. If any of you are aware of the work of Mariana Mazzucato, who's kind of done thinking on missions-based policy making, it's very much come along these lines. And as I said, we kind of think that there's some main advantages in terms of we make the strategy kind of much more action oriented. What are the things which then need to happen in order to achieve transport and wider objectives. So if you're kind of working towards a mission, then it becomes much more action focused, compared to kind of objectives, and then you have a much more objective based approach. There's also the opportunity within this to actually incorporate different movement and place types as well. Come as part of these different missions as well. But as I said, we can think that this is a really positive thing because it makes the strategy slightly more action oriented compared to the existing transport strategy. But also, disadvantages are subject to obviously kind of work on the big missions. Some areas may be slightly outside of TFSE's kind of remit, and would be the responsibility of other parties to deliver. But also kind of may not cover all of the themes and all of the things which you traditionally see kind of in a transport strategy. But obviously, as has been set out in the paper, we can consider that option. This option represents basically represents a good option by which to structure the transport strategy. Whilst it is something which has not been traditionally done before in transport strategy and policy making, we think this kind of reflects the fact that obviously there's desire to make the strategy much more action oriented, as well as providing a much bolder transport strategy. But obviously, I will kind of caveat this by saying this will require a lot of close engagement and close work, not just kind of a partnership board, transport strategy work group, and so on as well, over the coming months in order to develop any visions which can reflect sport ambitions. But that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't know, Rupert, if you kind of wanted to come in and add a few things. Sorry.
Rupert?
Rupert?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think,
Yeah, thank you. Great news on the public engagement campaign. I think that's steaming ahead. I just want to reiterate the point I made earlier when we were talking about the Centre of Excellence paper. I'm very keen for the board to get more immersed in this so that when we come to finalise it, everybody's in the same place. So on the June the 18th Centre of Excellence launch, we will put in a workshop for members so we can take through where we are at the moment. And then again on the 22nd of July, your board meeting, which is a face-to-face board meeting, we will hold a further member workshop prior to the board meeting to ensure that you're sighted on the direction we're going. It's quite an important piece of work. It is, a big chunk of the work that we do is driven by the transport strategy. And I know members previously are keen to be involved in it. So we think we've got those initial 2 dates and we will get those into your calendars for you.
Thank you, Rupert. Questions or comments? I mean, it is a fairly important step as to actually how we produce and deliver the next iteration. So if not now, it would be good for members to become involved. Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds excellent, and I endorse the courage that goes into picking option 7. Sadly, I can't make the 18th, but I will be there on the 22nd. The question is, this may be detail, will you be presenting it as just those missions, or will you make sure there is consistency with the other 6 options and maybe produce tables which illustrate how they are consistent still? Because as a checklist, the other 6 options are still valuable. Is that your intention?
Does anyone want to answer that, or shall we take that as an
interesting thought,
question?
Daniel? I haven't. I'd like to chew that over with James, but the point you make about consistency is it's a good one, and we could sort of tabulate something the way that you've described. The one bit I didn't mention, Keith, just now was we are keen to set up a member task and finish group as well. That would consist of only a few meetings between now and and December, and we think we'd hold that through Teams, so it's not a physical meeting. But it would be quite good to have sort of 5 members of the board say to just help us navigate this. So the points that Daniel's raised, for example, if you've got that board oversight as we're developing, we're able to sort of iterate this refresh as we go along.
Thank you. Simon?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you very much, James. That was really helpful. I think, like Daniel, I was kind of torn on this one between option 6 and 7, but looking at and I think he's right in saying that option 7 is more challenging, but option 6 is less nuanced than we need. Actually, it needs to be much more refined. I think so. There's a couple of points in there within the Kent and Medway Environment Group. We've been looking at transport in quite a detailed way. And I'm sure other authorities have been doing theirs and how we deliver the decarbonisation programme. And looking at some of the figures, something like 75% of transport movements in Kent and Medway are less than 15 kilometres. So how we get around that, how we look at that in more detail. Equally, I think the NHS figures are something like 4% of all movements are NHS related with their vehicles and stuff like that. So there's a lot of nuance within all the data that we'll be looking at going forward in this. And I think option 7 probably takes that into consideration more. But I think also, looking at this as a refresh, I've got a feeling that we'll be at a refresh again in a year's time, because as each year goes by, resources change and the speed of delivery of some issues changes and stuff like that. So having option 7 as a flexible sort of constantly revisiting it on a regular basis is key in heart of that. So I just wanted to sort of emphasise how we have to be sort of quite smart about the whole process, as well as getting the key delivery targets and outcomes right. We need to also have them as smart and flexible as well. Thanks, Chair.
I think that's key to all of what we do. The whole landscape is moving quite quickly, so we do need to be able to be fleet of foot. So, Joy, you wanted to come in, please. Joy? Yeah.
Sorry, was that me who's supposed to come on then? Sorry about that, Keith. I was trying to multitask and print at the same time.
Not a problem.
That common female problem. I was just going to say that, to be brutally honest about it, if I look at the options, with the level of detail in there, it was difficult to determine which one I could actually go with. But I think I would favour the sort of general consensus of 6 or 7, and therefore I'll go with the Officer Flow, because they're far more experts than I am.
Thank you for that. I think the request that Rupert's made for 4 or 5 members to put themselves forward would be really welcome. And so, Rupert, best way to do that is to contact who?
You can either contact me direct, so either drop me a message or an email. Of course, if members have a view that they'd really want to get stuck in, then I'm happy to hear from them now. But otherwise, just drop me an email. Possibly what I'll do, actually, just as a prompt, I'll just get a message out to you, and then that sets out what I think we'll want to do, and then you can reply to that with your interest.
I think that's really helpful if we can do that.
Chair, could I just interject? Sorry, just come back on that one. I was going to ask Rupert on that particular point. Does he have a feel for the sort of cross skill set that he would like of those 5 particular members of the board? In other words, does he have an idea of who he'd like to be there?
So I think to get a good spread, I mean, ideally 3 elected members, possibly someone from Protected Landscapes, and possibly someone from business. So either Daniel or Vince. That will probably give us a reasonable sort of spread. And of course, it's not a decision-making body. The board will ultimately make those decisions, and we'll make sure that we'll have those workshops with the whole of the board in. But I think having a specific cohort of members to work with us as we develop this, I think would be really helpful.
Thank you for that. And if you could send that out, that would definitely prompt people to respond. And so those with interest, as I say, Rupert's point, whilst it will become detailed, it's not shouldn't be too onerous. We're just having 5 meetings between now and December. So anyone with an interest, please respond. In the meantime, we're asked to agree the recommendations as printed. Are we all happy to do that? So it's note, and agree the strategy should be structured around addressing a number of big missions. I guess that's a general point rather than an exact one. So with that in mind, are we happy to agree that? No one against. So thank you. Agreed. Thank you for that. Agenda item 15, responses to consultation. Rupert, do you want to take us through this?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I won't spend too much time on it. I think the Peninsula Transport, East Sussex County Council and Canterbury District Council, all of those pieces of work align well with the strategy and direction of transport for the South East, and we've commented accordingly where there may be opportunities to improve. The one I'd just flag is the Transport Select Committee. This was a call for evidence on the draft rail reform bill. So the headline there is we are saying that the Transport Act should reflect the role of subnational transport bodies. So the Transport Act was amended by the Cities and Local Devolution Act, which sets out the role and remit and constitution of subnational transport bodies. And so we think that should explicitly, the draft legislation should explicitly reference that to ensure that the advice of STBs gets taken account of in the new integrated rail structure. And that's all I wish to say, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments on any of the other? No? Okay, well, we'll agree that as printed, which moves us nicely on to 16, which is Transport Forum update. Jeff, will you take us through that, please? Thank you again. Are you there,
muted, Jeff?
Yeah, no, muted.
Yeah, I'm muted now. Is it? You've finished, have you, Rupert?
Yes.
Good. Right. Very relatively quick update on the Transport Forum and Advisory Panel. As we were trying to refocus or re-energise some of the some of the meetings we had. We had a face-to-face event back in April. It was attended by 32 stakeholders, and sort of considering where we might focus our transport investment in what's likely to be relatively tough financial times. We had a good feedback at the meetings, and over 90% of the people that came said they were likely to attend a future Transport Forum event, which was good. What we've also been doing in parallel is to have an advisory panel, and the advisory panel met for the first time on the 30th of April with one representative from each of TFSC's thematic working groups. If you want them all, but it's in the paper, but funding and finance, universities, decarbonisation, freight, active travel, future mobility, bus and electric vehicles. But it's all in the report. But in particular, the advisory board agreed that we'd ask or have asked the officers to undertake work to draft a forward programme that's focused on for our future meetings. And I think it's part of having lots of opinions, but trying to get something collective, which enables us to have healthy debate. So that's what we're doing. We will have more meetings, I'm sure, once the officers or the officers on the advisory panel have taken this a bit further, and we look forward to, and we're asking you to note the recent work of the Transport Forum and the advisory panel.
Yes, can I thank you again? And it sounds to me as though the advisory panel will actually formulate the agenda for you going forward and enable you to remain focused, which is really good, because I know the forum was becoming more and more successful in as much as you had more and more people wanted to come, but it certainly took the agenda, made the agenda difficult for you to manage. So well done on that front. So thank you. Any questions, comments for Jeff?
I was going to say, only easy ones permitted.
Yeah. Once again, thanks for your continued support. It really is important that we keep involved in these wider groups. So thanks for your efforts. We are happy to note the recommendations as Jeff has put forward. Thank you. So that takes us on to delivery of the strategic investment plan report. And Sarah, I think you're going to introduce, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So just a brief overview of what's in your report around the activities that are underway to support delivery of the schemes that are set out within the strategic investment plan. The delivery action plan, which I'm sure members will recall, is the document that actually sets out who is doing what about proposing schemes, bringing them forward, and all that kind of thing has been updated this year. Again, very grateful to all your officers for their time and sharing of information to allow us to do that. It's allowed us to have a much greater understanding of scheme ownership, and also allowed us to have a look at what's actually happened within the last year since we did the original delivery action plan in the first place. So from that, we know that 33 schemes have actually progressed to development stage during the course of the year, which I think is testament to the vast amounts of work that's going on across the whole region with all of your officers to make those things happen. We also know another 47 schemes are currently underway, but they've not actually just moved to another stage. They've just sort of progressed through a stage, if you like. So I think that's really good. That really shows the collective effort across the region to deliver some of those schemes. Alongside the updating of the delivery action plan with that new information, we've also updated StoryMap, which is our map-based interactive system that allows people, whenever it's on our website, to go and have a look and see where the schemes are and where we are with it. So again, that's good news there. Moving on to the sort of scheme development support that we are able to give, members will recall, I'm sure, that we agreed to provide support to 4 schemes for this last financial year, 1 in Kent, 1 in Medway, 1 Portsmouth and 1 in Southampton. All of that work is either underway, and in fact some of them are either complete or very staged to being completed, which again is good news, and hopefully that has made a big difference to those schemes, in that they've been able to progress further and faster than they would have done without the support that we were providing. The budget that members considered earlier does include, again, another allocation, in fact, more allocation this year for that scheme support. However, that is one of the items that I referred to earlier that we can't get underway until we do have confirmation of the DFT grant. So we are working with all your authorities to understand expressions of interest for schemes that you would like support with this year, and working through sort of the prioritisation of those, but we can't actually make a decision on how many or which ones we'll be able to provide with support until we get DFT funding. So we'll keep in close contact with your officers around all of those schemes, and we're obviously aiming to support as many schemes as we can across the region. Moving on to major road network and large local major schemes, we continue to provide support to your scheme promoters from our local authorities, participating in a workshop with the DFT aimed at sort of increasing the understanding of the requirements of the business cases. This links back also to the work that Joshua was talking about earlier, and Emily as well, with the analytical framework and the Centre of Excellence. So to really sort of provide as much support as we can to your officers as they are trying to bring things forward. We've had some really good news around the major road network, with, in the last month, 2 schemes actually receiving approval at outline business case stage. So that is like the second to last step of actually getting our hands on the money. Really good news. It allows the 2 authorities in question to go ahead with procuring contractors, completing statutory processes, and the last steps to actually getting the work underway on site. So really good news, and again, really good work from across the region in getting schemes to that stage. Moving on to the roads investment strategy. Again, this was mentioned earlier and confirmed that we are waiting for government to announce where they are with the next announcement, I suppose, with the draft RIS. We as STBs are sort of on the key list of consultants for people to be consulted around this. We've actually got a date for a workshop with DFT and National Highways, where they're going to take us through the announcements shortly after it is made. So again, we will make sure we continue to advocate for the schemes in our region that we need identified within the SIP, and obviously liaise with local authorities across the region to make sure we feed back anything we learn around that. I think that's the main points out of the paper, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions.
Sarah, thank you very much. And I think the amount of success that's beginning to show now is absolutely there, evidence to the value of us working together. So thank you and the team for taking those additional bits through to a successful conclusion. So comments or questions? Tim?
Thank you. I can't find it in the paper, but I am informed by colleagues that this work stream or set of work streams did include, or was to include, the preparation of a statement on the future of rural transport, which out in the protected landscapes is obviously a difficult issue, an important issue, one in which we like to see more progress. I'm just talking from my brief here. I'm not actually picking up on the paper, but I'm assured by my expert that this is within this item. Am I right?
I don't think it's necessarily within this item, but certainly as part of the wider TFSE technical programme, the challenges of rural transport is something we do recognise. Some of the other subnational transport bodies are leading on some items of work, Transport East, and I believe it's Peninsular Transport down in the southwest. So we do work very closely with them to learn from the work they're doing and how that can then apply to our area.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? Well, then we are set there with some recommendations. So again, thank you very much. I think we are moving forward. So we agree as printed.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Agreed.
So we now come on to the technical programme update, and I think Kate's going to take us through that.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Just a few highlights, really. The basic being that the ECVI visualization tool will go live sometime in the summer. It will be supported through some workshops with the officers, so we can all look forward to that going live. Then the decarbonisation, which, forgive me, this is obviously all these bits aren't necessarily my particular areas of work, but the carbon assessment playbook tool will also be available hopefully at the end of May. So there will also be some training accompanied for that. And so they are two of the highlights we have. We also have the first in-person meeting for the members of the wider South East Freight Forum in June. And that will take place in London on the 20th. We had a very successful meeting in March about lorry parking, at which the DFT also basically invited us to become part of the Task and Finish group on their HGV parking initiative, which is very welcome. And I have since been invited to join that. So a few of the highlights. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And again, I think it's credit to all of you, the fact that we're now being included in some of these conversations. So well done. Any comments or questions for Kate? None showing. So we've got 5 notes there. Are we happy to... technical programme. No, sorry, I've got a different note to you, but there are fine 5 recommendations. So are we happy to agree those? Thank you very much.
Agreed.
So we now come to 19, communications and stakeholder engagement update. And Duncan, I think you're going to give us an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again, colleagues. So the update outlines our recent work regarding comms and engagement activity over the last few months. As James Gleave mentioned, regarding our transport strategy refresh, a lot of that work's been focusing on our Your Voices survey. The current figure is 861 responses as of about 20 minutes ago, so we're particularly pleased with that, and it's down to the good work of our engagement manager, Jamie McSorley, and our communications assistant and apprentice, Tia Shelley. We're putting in work at the moment ahead of our Centre of Excellence that Emily mentioned earlier, and also the update just outlined some of our recent MP meetings. More than happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Duncan. And as I say, I've said earlier, I think the continued engagement with our MPs is to be welcome. So thank you very much for your efforts on that. Any other questions or comments for Duncan? None? Well, again, thank you very much for your continued work, and we will agree the recommendations to note the engagement and communication activity that has been undertaken. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Any other business? It's always a risk. I don't know. Never sure we should have these, but come on, Rob. No? Goodness, look at that. I could have relaxed. I've been really worried about that all morning, but there we are. Okay, just a couple of things from me. Then the first is to remind you that there will be an invite out for June the 18th, and as many of you that can attend that would be really, really welcome and appreciated. And the next board meeting in person at the LGA on Monday, the 22nd of July, from 2 o'clock until 5 o'clock. So, that will be the AGM. So your opportunity to come along and meet and set the scene for the next year. Rupert.
Thank you, Chairman. And on that 22nd, we will, although the board meeting is in the afternoon, we will send an invite round for a workshop in the morning, so that you're not just coming up for the board meeting. We've got some transport strategy stuff we can do with you as well, and of course as many board members as possible welcome. We will provide lunch for those that attend the morning session as well. Thank you.
There you go, an offer of lunch from Rupert. It can't get any better, can it, really? with that, can I sincerely thank you all for the time this morning. There's been an awful lot of really good information in there, and I thank the team again. And look forward to seeing you all on the 18th of June and then again in July. Thank you all very much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Kate.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.